If we are here not to do what you and I wanna do and go forever crazy with it, why the hell we are even here?
Households is probably the biggest thing that I want to see Amp-Guard become stronger in. Houses need to do things, not kingdoms. Holdings are there to organize the houses, not to do everything for them.
Side question. I know Amp-Guard culture. Per our rulebook, you can only belong to one fighting company. That makes sense.
Right.
You can join many households.
Right.
You don't see a lot of household crossover, however. Do you see that
a lot
in other
of it
groups?
here and there. It depends on what the kind of household
Well, yeah,
is.
it depends who it is. And
There's not a lot of crossover in my household particularly, although there is some. But it's because we're kind of an RP house in that we play a band of highwaymen. And we are...
I thought you were bloody pirates.
Yeah, well...
Land pirates.
Yeah,
the pirate here.
We're river pirates, and we marine out whenever the pirates come ashore. But, we have a very much that we're like a minority culture. It's like we're an ethnicity in the Black Hands, so to speak, and we kind of have that thing going on.
I've noticed a lot of your guys are always
houses in general need to do more. If you have an RP house, houses of the past that I can think of that had an RP flavor that were strong in their areas, like C of A, the Church of Apocalypse for a long time up north, Annihilus, stuff like this. These groups need to lead up, and some of them do, and run the feasts, not the kingdom. Occasional kingdom feasts I think are very good, but I think houses need to step up.
Yeah, and that's something actually...
When they do, it is better done, it is stronger, because a small group of people that's used to working together does it.
I agree with that, the meat and cheese platter.
Sorry.
Yes.
Hey, guys, if Karma's clean in camp, could you help her out? And, no monarch can lead by themselves. They need a house. They need people backing them. Everybody does, if they're going to really serve the club properly, because it's a big club, you know. So that's what I see in other groups. To answer your question there, that's what I see in other groups that is stronger than Amp-Guard, is the level of things that are run by households as opposed to holdings. Holdings are important, and I think the holding structure in Amp-Guard needs a revision too, but that's kind of a different conversation. What I see most in other clubs, but it is what actually it's kind of on cue there. What I see in other clubs that Amp-Guard could learn from most is how they build their infrastructure, as far as who's in control of what, who's running things, where the party and the culture and the wards and things come from. In a lot of other groups, it is less kingdom-oriented and more household and holding-oriented, and the households really carry the brunt.
Do you think that's because other cities might have larger individual city groups?
No.
Okay.
In Amp-Guard, maybe that's the case. But really, if you look at Amp-Guard's structure, at how many holdings there are within, say, a 30-mile radius or something like that, it seems to me that, especially in the Northwest, you have your homeland down in Eugene, Iron Keep, okay?
Yep.
And then, you know, a couple hours north, you got Salem, and then Portland, and then there's a holding in Vancouver right now, and there's Longview. And how many of those holdings are large baronies or duchies? And my theory
all but one
is
right
that
now, I believe.
Other clubs are structured very differently than Amp-Guard on the holding level. A lot of our orders are built on a similar structure. A lot of our individual things are built on a similar structure, and our titles are very similar. But our holdings, as far as how they're organized, is very different. If you go to some of the bigger or older clubs, you'll notice that shires belong to baronies, which belong to duchies, which belong to kingdoms. And it creates the ability for 3 or 4 shires to have their own things going on, and their own holdings, and their own events, and their own fighter practices, etc., etc., but that they belong to a barony, which might throw events that are larger scale not because they have 10 more members than the other holding, but because they have 3 smaller holdings feeding into them. And it creates a regional power block of economy and role play and rivalries and cooperation. And it allows the trickle down of granting orders. You know, a shire can only grant up to the 2nd order or something like that, you know, and a barony up to 5.
2, 5,
actually
8,
to 8, etc. And it seems to me that the baronies should be the ones distributing those 3s and 4s and 5s to the shires, and the duchies distributing those 6, 7s, and 8s to the baronies, and so on. And it goes for feasts and everything else. If, for instance, if Mithril Hills is a duchy, and within 30 to 50 miles of Mithril Hills there's a pair of baronies and a shire or 2, then when the duchy does things, they should be drawing on the resources, at least manpower-wise, of the holdings around them, because it would behoove them all to do so. And that's what makes the events at some of these other clubs so much smoother, so much
question
larger.
then, without changing Amtgard's corpora structure.
I don't think anything can be done without changing Amtgard's corpora structure
Well,
entirely.
there could, in a way.
Culturally, RP-wise, perhaps, and we
Well, I
can
mean
always work together.
the sponsorship sort of thing, because we can't really change our corpora. But it seems like if larger groups sponsored and helped smaller groups, that would be.
Blackspire, we can't change our corpora, but in Amtgard we could.
Well, we actually in Blackspire we can change our corpora.
To a degree.
Yeah. We actually we're
Within
running
limits.
our own separate.
I know. But we have limits on how we organize ourselves.
Yeah,
within
well,
the
with the
rules
word
of Amtgard.
standardizations, we can't change that.
Right.
That's in the rule book now. Has to go through the
Is it
Circle of
something
Monarchs.
Blackspire can do to change how shires and baronies are run, though? I mean,
No.
I didn't
No,
think
it's-
so.
it's all by-
That would take a change on the entire Amtgard scale.
And you kind of have a good idea there, but I was talking with a knight recently, and concerning my land, Iron Keep saying they were being ignored. But see, we
So
became
far south.
became a duchy, which is the kingdom saying you're responsible enough to give up to 8. And that's the way Amtgard kind of works. Is you have to earn your responsibilities.
I would love to see 3 powerful duchies in the Northwest, and really grand duchies. I'd like to see 3 super grand duchies in the Northwest, to be quite honest. I'd like to see one that is the Western Corridor. I'd like to see it from Longview to Salem, or Longview to Eugene, and it is a long stretch, but I don't think that we could justify a bigger one until there are more holdings further south than you. And
Which is
then maybe
hard.
there would be room
It's-
for 4. Well, I don't know. There's a lot of interest going on down south, actually.
Yeah, I've talked to some of those people.
Rosewood has been talking about.
I've met one of those
things,
members.
and-
He came
and,
up from Celestial Kingdoms.
There's definitely
believe it
room
is.
down towards Medford and what's that?
We have a member moving from IK to Grants Pass.
Where the Shakespeare Festival is.
Ashland.
Ashland, yeah.
Ashland's had a group before and it
Yeah.
failed, which is strange because you'd think
Well,
that
and-
community
and
would.
The only reason it failed is that people didn't keep trying. There's room for it there. There is. There's room for an Amtgard holding in Ashland easily. But when that becomes the case, yeah, sure, keep me smoking. Dude.
I'm a chain smoker, so
Yeah, I'm close to it. But there's a lot of little things that would allow Amtgard to become a larger, more mature club that would be more desirable to people. In my travels, I have run into a lot of people who feel that Amtgard doesn't have a very good reputation. Thank you, Millwood.
yeah. And I grew up actually on that. You know,
I'm sure you
Eugene
did.
has a pretty strong, with Eagles, have a pretty strong SCA community. I tell people I'm in Amtgard. Well, yeah, that's a bunch of kiddie game.
Yeah.
But see, I've done SCA stuff.
They misinterpret us a lot.
At least in that Eugene, a lot of the SCA stuff, it's the same sort of politics. See, I'm an A&S guy.
Right.
I cannot stand the period Nazis
No.
who are
It's-
pushing stuff that is not exactly 100% period.
No, it's snobbery, and snobbery always leads to decline in the club.
It's not easy having yourself a good time.